It was fear. It was panic. It was extreme nausea. All I knew is that I needed to get out. This was London in 1992. I was queuing up to watch a football match at White Hart Lane in Tottenham. This is when I first felt it. I don't know how I got through that night, but I did. I woke up the next morning, thought to myself, what was all that about? But then it happened again, and again, and again. Within a few days, I realised, do you know what, this is anxiety. As time went by, I thought to myself, I have no idea how to cope with this, how to deal with this. And one of the problems I had is I used to think a lot. And I used to think to myself, how am I going to get through this? But I used to come up with reasons and reasons and reasons for why nothing would work. I used to worry a lot. I used to worry about the little things in life. So much so, it got to a point where in social situations I would excuse myself because I would be physically sick. But the problem I had as well was that I thought to myself, no one could help. At the end of the day, I was a guy. And for me to talk about having anxiety, I genuinely felt embarrassed. So I thought, I'm going to have to do this alone. As time went by, nothing seemed to work. I got to a point, well, what should I do? I decided to go and see my GP. My GP offered me medication. I understand the value of what that can do, but for me, I didn't want that to be my crutch. Sometimes I'd go out, a couple of drinks would calm me, it would relax me. In reality, I was looking for a more natural coping mechanism. As time went by, I thought to myself, you're on your own, Steve. You need to do something here. So for me, it was time to rethink. I wanted to work on my mind. I started to understand, you know, your mind can either be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy. I needed to establish my mindset. So, nowadays, in my role, in my profession, I have businesses come to me, asking me to help them to create a more mentally resilient workforce. Easier said than done in reality. But the reality of doing something like that is an element of re-education. For them, it's time to rethink. So today, I'm glad to say I don't suffer with anxiety anymore. I don't forget it. For me, it's helped me. And I'll tell you how it's helped me. Now, when I get nervous or worried, I reframe it. I try to tell myself, you're actually not worried, you're not anxious, you're not in fear, you are excited. For me, the one thing I've realised, some of the best things in life are on the other side of fear, terror, and our anxieties. So that's what I convince myself with now. Because I thought to myself, my mind could convince me that I'm nervous, I'm anxious, I'm worried about something. So surely I can convince myself that I'm happy, I'm excited. All this comes back to learning. As children, we fall over, we get up. We try not to do it again. This is learning through experience. And through experiential learning, that's where I started to understand I've done something and I've survived. I was worried, I'm here to tell the tale. This is where I've learned. To a point when I would worry about doing presentations at work, role plays in training, chairing a meeting, spending time sometimes with family and friends, I used to find anxious. And then many years ago, I was asked to be a best man. I was over the moon to be asked. It was great, it was fantastic. But then the reality set in. Between now and the wedding, I knew I'd be standing up in front of people. Fear, anxiety, it all came out. So that process of the lead-up wasn't the best, but it was what it was. This was also a bit of a pivotal moment for me because during this time, I prepared like a 7, 8, 9, 10-minute speech. And a couple of minutes in, I put a joke in. And I thought to myself, if I don't get a laugh, this will probably damage me for the rest of the speech. I put in a mother-in-law joke. Mother-in-law jokes always work. However, what I didn't realise was that I would be sat on the table right next to my mother-in-law. Cope with it, Steve, cope with it. But I delivered it. A couple of minutes in, I dropped the joke. And it got laughter. And do you know what? That was a little tonic for me. That's what I needed. That ensured that I finished the rest of that speech with the feedback that the audience had accepted me. And there's little things like that that I started to realise, you know, why worry at the start? Because the reality is when you complete something like this, you will always have an element of euphoria. TED is a good example. There is a fear, there is sometimes a worry about standing up in front of people. But I know, when I finish this, I know exactly how I'm going to feel. State. Considering my anxieties, it's helped shape me. It's helped become an asset to me. And the one thing it does, it helps me understand others better. Understanding what's going on underneath can help you develop relationships, build rapport. And in my role as a leader, coach, manager, parent, friend, husband, how do you make relationships work? It's through compromise. It's through understanding. Tools. I needed some tools. So to develop my mindset, I needed a few bits and pieces. And over the years, I've stumbled across a few things that have helped me. Several years ago, I was introduced to psychometric profiling. Lots of psychometric profiling is based on the works of Carl Jung. Through lots of Carl Jung's research, it teaches us how to understand how we prefer to make decisions, how we prefer to process information, how we prefer to interact. I stress the word prefer, because that's what he focused on. These are just our preferences. You take how we would like to interact with people. At one end of the spectrum, we could have introverts, and at the other end of the spectrum, we could have extroverts. So I'm an introvert by nature, calm, reserved, reflective, but every now and again, I need to exercise my extroverted type. I need to adapt and connect. Why do I need to do that? It's because I need to make a relationship work. That's where I started to understand we all need to become social chameleons, to develop relationships and to find that level of compromise. My mindset. Mindset is a word that is constantly bandied around this day and age, but the reality is it's something that we all need to work on individually and collectively. The work of Carol Dweck, when she's focused on her spectrum of growth mindset and fixed mindset, it's a state of mind, it's how we think, act and feel. Fixed mindset is very much a, why bother? What's the point? Growth mindset is, I will do that, I'm going to do that, I'm going to make a difference. It's a slight tweak in mentality, but it can have huge outcomes. Emotions and feelings. I've spoken a bit about emotions, spoken a bit about feelings, but the reality is that we need to identify this not just in ourselves, but in others. Several years ago, I came across John Fisher's process of transition. This process of transition helps deal with change and trauma. But again, it helps us identify where other people are. If you can start to identify where you are on this spectrum, and it is a journey. The reality is, when something happens, you deal with it in an initial way. Everyone else deals in it in their own way. But it's about identifying how you can help, how people process change and levels of trauma. In my profession, I run lots of workshops and seminars and events. I want people to learn. I want people to understand that by learning, you can improve yourself. But you need to create the right environment. My previous anxieties would make me worry about going to a learning event, a training event, or a seminar. I would worry about, what are they going to get me to do? Is it going to be role play? Is it going to be presentation? I know that fear. I see the fear in people's eyes when they turn up to a day with me. I try not to do that. I need to create that level of psychological safety so people can then start to engage and interact. Then, if I subtly install a role play into the day, then they don't realise it's actually happening. Creating the environment. First thing I look at is levels of anxiety. I want people to interact and engage. I want people to enjoy it. Belief. Showcasing belief in people does build confidence. It's worked for me. I know it's worked for others. At the end of the day, by supporting, guiding and advising, you can help build people's confidence. Then you can start extracting performance and potential. Raising the bar. Raising expectations. Too often, human nature dictates that sometimes we want to do just enough. I like to push people. I like to take people out of their comfort zones because I can see the benefit in their future by doing so. Raising the bar, raising expectations, produces better performances. And the final one, welcome. Do you know, there's the word inclusivity, and for me, it's not just a human resources buzzword, it is actually a real thing. When you make people feel welcome, they are more likely to want to be part of the team. They are more likely to want to interact and engage with their colleagues and peers. Too often, we create collectives where no one is made welcome, or sometimes they may be made welcome. At school, teams are being picked in the playground. The usual faces were chosen first. How do they feel? They probably felt okay. For them, it's the norm. They're always chosen. But what about the ones who were chosen last? How do they feel? Chosen as an afterthought? Are they going to be inspired to engage and interact? Probably not. And they can grow up feeling like that. I'm not suggesting you high-five and group hug everyone every time you see them, but make people feel welcome. It genuinely does make a difference. We all have that responsibility. Again, parents, managers, friends. We all have our responsibility for our own well-being, but for everyone else as well. Especially in this age of social media. People's mental well-being is being damaged because no one likes a photo, or a status, or a tweet. We need to identify where this starts to hammer people. Not everything works. Do you know, the one thing I've realised is that we do learn from failure. And as time's gone by, that's probably helped me develop myself. I like to evolve. I like to be a bit flexible. Sometimes plans that are rigid don't always work, but I don't want to hammer myself just because they haven't worked. I try to adapt. I try to change. The last point, I like to focus on legacy. I like to talk about, do you know, how do you want to be remembered? I've asked that question myself many times, and I do genuinely want to be remembered fondly. But from that point of view, I think, how can I do that? The one thing I keep as a bit of an internal mission for me is a quote by this lady here. So this is Maya Angelou. She's a US civil rights activist. She said, sometimes people forget what you say, people forget what you do, but they never forget how you make them feel. Thank you.